Robinson. Columnist David Bullard landed in some seriously hot water last week after Sunday Times editor Mondli Makanya fired him for a column many people said was racist. Bullard painted a picture of an Africa that was undeveloped and stuck in a bygone age. Did he deserve to get sacked? Well, you decide for yourself. Lorata and Bailey spoke to Bullard to find out why he wrote what he did.
All right, David Bullard, thank you very much for coming through. You've been described as a bigot, as a racist, as an intellectual bully. How do you feel?
I'm not sure he's described me like that, but I imagine quite a lot of people might do. The cost of sort of being a columnist on the Sunday Times, particularly a controversial one, is obviously not the most pleasant thing. It would be a lot easier to write the fly fishing beat. But I think if you're going to do a column like Out to Lunch, which ran for 14 years, with the full approval of the editor, with the full approval of the board of Abusa and Johnny, because it was then, the aim was to draw readers through to a particularly boring part of the Sunday Times, the business section and the career section.
Right.
Now, the brief is to go out there, kick ass, be controversial, and I think I probably managed to do that, particularly this week.
You absolutely did. Uncolonized Africa wouldn't know what it was missing. That was the title of this controversial piece that finally got you fired from the Sunday Times. What were you aiming at?
Well, the message on that whole piece, I mean, it's very much how you read anything, and I think, you know, there's a column in the Business Day, R.W. Johnson says that, you know, if we have, you assume people have a sense of humour, firstly. You assume they have a knowledge of words, and there has been, for example, one example there when we talked about simple tribesmen. Now, simple means blacks are stupid. No, simple means uncomplicated life. You don't have plasma TV screens. I mean, I would describe the Dalai Lama as simple, but I wouldn't describe him as stupid. But I don't think he leads a life where he travels around in convoys of cars. So it's very much rather down to interpretation. The piece was incendiary, was intended to be incendiary. It goes to a sub, it goes to 3 subs, it goes to an editor, and it still managed to get in. This is the large mystery. I'm afraid I can't accept, after 14 years and 692 columns, or 691 before this, but nobody saw that. Nobody phoned me and said, David, we don't feel in the current mood in this country, with racism being high on the agenda, that this is appropriate.
All right, let me just take some of our viewers through excerpts of the text, and this is what's really gotten a lot of people's blood boiling. You say things like, every so often a child goes missing from a village, eaten either by a hungry lion or crocodile. The family mourns for a week or so, and then they have another child.
Well,
it's quite patronizing and derogatory. It suggests that African people fornicate with absolutely no emotion, no moral parameter.
It doesn't suggest African people do that at all. It was just anyone would do it. I would suggest that when the Danes, the Vikings invaded England and raped and pillaged, that the families, in order to ensure survival, probably reproduced. I would ensure that I would suggest that the natural inclination for any human being, if we're going to be serious about a flippant peace, would be to reproduce. So I can't see anything wrong with that. And don't forget, that article starts with the word imagine. It's an imaginary article. It's no less real than
Let's talk about that imagine, because Kololo Mangu was raising the question of, where did you get a sense that 21st century Africa is this idyllic space with Africans who do very little work, graze their cattle, have children willy-nilly, have never seen a plasma screen TV?
Well, Kololo Mangu is not a man known for his sense of humour. One has to say that. Imagine, you can imagine anything you want. You can imagine anything you want. I can imagine anything I want. In an imaginary article, you're creating a scenario. And the whole subtext of this
whole article... Why do you create a scenario of an Africa that is obviously pre-19th century, and when the Europeans arrive here, they are very 21st century, because when they arrive here, they're arriving here on steel planes, etc., etc.
Yeah, but that's for the story. That creates the whole thing. No one has arrived here. The whole point of the writer is no one has arrived. It's a complete fantasy. It's completely unreal. It's not supposed to be historically correct. I mean, obviously, if you say imagine, it's not supposed to be
historically correct. At the end of your narrative, you then say, you know, there's been this sense of unease amongst the Africans who weren't really sure what they're uneasy about, but eventually the Chinese arrived, just as the Europeans would have arrived earlier on, and their prayers are answered because now they have someone to blame. That scapegoating idea, that Africans never take the initiative. When somebody else takes the initiative, things don't go very well, then they blame it on the European colonizer and now the Chinese neo-colonizer.
That I do stand by. That, I think, is a problem with our country. That's why we're not moving forward. There's too much blame either way. If we're going to move forward, we must get rid of this blame. This, I believe, was exactly the message of that. That I do not stand back from. because that precisely is what it was all about. It was about to say that the essence of our society in South Africa is to keep looking back, to keep blaming the past, to keep saying this was wrong, that was wrong. Look at what is happening to us. We have electricity.
Do you not think that European colonizers have some moral imperative to apologize for slavery colonization?
Yes.
Do you not think that African people this day and age are a victim of an unequal and unbalanced international trading system where raw materials have been stripped from Africa with very little incentive for Africans to own the means of production, because that's how the international system is structured?
Absolutely, that's how the international system is structured. Now, what do? You can't roll back a videotape and change it all. So we have to move forward. You can't
But you certainly should make people take some sort of moral accountability.
The moral accountability is one thing, but that doesn't change the
Which
dynamic.
many people are not prepared to take.
No, that doesn't change the dynamic.
Which people are not even prepared to accept that there's been slavery in Africa.
Well, that's entirely up to them, but that doesn't actually change the dynamics of the reality of the situation. And if we keep blaming, we don't move forward. And that is the message of the
So how do you propose we move forward from our simple, idyllic life where we have no plasma screens?
Well, that's a fantasy. We are not in that. I've noticed quite a lot of plasma screens around. So I don't think we're in that simple, idyllic life. It might be actually quite pleasant to be in that simple, idyllic life, I have to say. But we're in a very different situation. We're in a situation in a country where we don't have the guarantee of electricity for 5 years. We have holes appearing on our roads. We have robots that don't work. We have high crime. We have all those problems, and we need to sort those problems out. We do not, in my opinion, sort those problems out by continually harping on the past, however unjust it was. And I'm afraid we've all had unjust past. If I go back long enough in my past, it was hideously unjust. But I'm afraid I can't keep blaming the Romans for my problems.
Well, Africans will continue to blame the West until the West takes some responsibility, be it through debt relief, be it through granting more trade opportunities at Doha, be it through equitable relationships.
I'm quite certain that's true.
That's what's cool. So thanks a lot, David Bullard.
Right, I'm barely talking to David Bullard, whose column was pulled from the Sunday Times after a missive that he put that was published 2 Sundays ago. Right after the break, we'll be talking to Spiro Chireka, an ITC analyst at Frost & Sullivan, and we'll be talking about the results that came out of Datacentrics just a couple of days ago. Thoughts on the Competition Commission, the spat between Telkom and the Competition Commission, as well as what's next for Altec.